What's up, guys and gals, and welcome to Weekend Review, the weekend series where we talk about everything that's been going on at the Nerd Castle. Kind of talk about the series that we have running right now. How good is your week going? Okay, because honestly, this is the last weekend review we're going to do before Christmas. How crazy is that? It really feels like, or whatever holiday you celebrate. But as for me right now, we've got like 5 days till Christmas. At the time I'm recording this, 5 days until Christmas. It feels like December has absolutely just vanished right in front of me. It's been a very, very busy month, and as always, I'm very, very thankful that it's a busy month. It could be a not so busy month, which would be really, really stressful for me, so I am happy to be working nonstop. This is the first day I actually took off in probably about 2 or 3 weeks. I slept for like 14 hours last night. Like, I went to bed and I woke up like at nighttime today. It was ridiculous. I was actually pretty embarrassed about it. Got my Santa hat on. I just went out to like a nice little Christmas dinner with family and just enjoyed ourselves. Got out there, but it's time to get down to business and do a weekend review. We got stuff to talk about, obviously, because there's many, many things going on at the Nerd Castle right now that I haven't got to touch on. Let's start with the big fat undead elephant in the room. We're going to talk about Dying Light first. Dying Light is a game that I'm liking a lot. I'm liking it tremendously. Actually, weirdly enough, it was a game that I was really, really cynical about because I wasn't a big fan of Dead Island. I found that Dead Island was like kind of iffy. Like, for every one thing that I liked about Dead Island, there was like 1.5 things that I hated. And so while I did play the game and I almost beat it, I got pretty far. But I've always had trouble getting past the city in the second part. Like, at the second half of the game, you're in like a big city or whatever. And I could get to the back end of there, but I was burnt out before I finished that part off. I have the game. Somebody gifted it to me a couple of years ago because I won a contest on the Steam forums. But I just haven't played it in a while. I need to sit down and actually try and make it through the game with like Perna or one of the characters that I've never played before. Because I always play Sam B. He's the only character that I like in the entire game. Everybody else is like, I'm just not a big fan. Just not a big fan of Dead Island. I guess I'll leave it right there. I think the thing with Dead Island is that I didn't like how your weapons like broke like instantaneously. I disliked how you were always trying to repair your stuff. I liked the upgrade system, and I did like how you could loot random stuff from all over the place, but by and large, I think it was just a game that didn't do it for me. And so with Dying Light, I'm really, really happy that the game has turned out to be a lot better than I thought it would be. I think they've omitted certain things like driving vehicles and stuff like that in order to make room for a very, very, actually, I like the parkour system. It grows on you after you play the game for a while. You start to get a feel for what you can do, as you unlock new abilities, like the ability to vault off of zombies and then drop kick the next guy using the same air, like vault off of a zombie onto a wall and then flip off the back to a different wall. Like, once you get used to it, you can move around with some sense of agility. The game really has kind of a weighty feel to it while you run around, and they seem to have like the fall damage tailored just right, which I enjoy as well. So if you mess up a jump, it becomes very, very quickly apparent that you're going to lose a lot of health. In one of the future episodes, you guys are going to see I found a climbing puzzle. Actually, it's off the beaten path, and it's a really, really complicated one. Like, it's huge. You know how there's the bridge in oh my god, I am just losing my mind right now. In Dying Light, you know how there's the bridge off in the distance? Every now and again you see that suspension bridge. You can actually get inside of the supports, and you can climb all the way up internally, and there's a bunch of collectibles and stuff in there. I've been fiddling around with them in my free time, but I'll probably show it off in like the last episode. We'll mess around with some of the time trials, but very, very pleased with the game so far. We do find a gun in the future, so stay tuned for that. We don't get much ammo for it. I think we only have like 9 bullets, but we get to shoot the guns. They don't really seem to affect zombies that much, and that's all that I think I really tested them on, but it's fun. I'm glad that we found a firearm, so you guys will see that. I think we pick up like I don't know if it's like a Sig Sauer or what it is. It looks kind of like a modernized Makarov. It's a weird looking gun. They say that it's German. It's called a German something rather in game, but it looks kind of like a Makarov meets like a PPK. So it's like a Makarov meets a Walther, but it looks like it's got like a polymer body like a Glock. It's a weird looking gun. I'm not really sure what correlation they're trying to draw. I'm not a big gun guy. I don't know a lot of stuff about guns, but it's definitely like a polymer finished mixture of like a Makarov and like a Walther. It's a very, very weird looking gun, and they say it's a German something rather variant, or either way, we get to play around with a gun in the future, and I'm very, very excited about that you guys are going to get to see me play with the firearms. Don't play with firearms. It's not safe, but yeah, in game, play with firearms all you want. Real life, don't play with firearms so much. No like weird like cowboy tricks and stuff. I know it's tempting, but no cowboy tricks here. No cowboy tricks here. Dead State. Still happy with Dead State. I think that we've made a couple decisions, or at least I've made a couple decisions during the course of the playthrough that I'm a little bit iffy about, but I am excited to see where the game goes. It definitely seems like things are going to get a lot more serious and a lot more dangerous before we get much further into the game, and I think that is going to be a drawing point for me, just in case we want to break out the crayons or anything, but I like the fact that Dead State, as you get further from the central location, the locations start to get nastier and nastier. Like, there tend to be more and more coyotes around. There tend to be more and more random events with guys with like brush hooks and armor and things like that, where you've actually got to think about the way you're going to go through the next combat. Otherwise, you end up getting yourself clipped. But I'm still having a lot of fun with Dead State. It's kind of like in the danger zone right now. I never talk about this, but there's like phases for a series when you play them on YouTube. And I always start out really, really enthusiastic about most games. And right in between like episode 15 to 20 is where I usually start to like peter out. And I start to be like, okay, I'll record it. But I think my enthusiasm's falling off. And with Dead State, I'm glad to report that that has not happened yet. And so I'm looking forward to actually seeing what happens in the future. I want to see like more storyline. I'm hoping that the game isn't just us like free roaming and scavenging and doing our thing. I'm hoping that the game has a concrete ending at some point where there's a storyline or an actual narrative that we're going to be drawn into. Because as of right now, it's all sort of emergent. Like, yeah, they give you little tips about what you need to go and do each day, but I'd prefer it to have at least some kind of real storyline somewhere, whether it's us looking for a cure or just ultimately trying to create a self-sustaining colony, and then it can just kind of like fade away to black and we just assume that everybody lived happily ever after. You would assume that after a while you would eventually kill all the zombies in the area, especially if they filtered through like slowly. If you're in like a small area, like the area that we're in, it seems like it's a very small town area in Texas. Like, it doesn't seem like there's a ton of people living around, and so over time I figure with trickle through you would eventually kill off all the zombies as long as you were vigilant about it, especially if your wall was stable. Like, eventually you'd be able to make the entire little township safe. You might get a couple walkers in every now and again from one county over or something, but unless you got any of the big hordes that they have like in Walking Dead or in like Left 4 Dead, I think it'd probably be okay. But yeah, still enthusiastic about Dead State. Definitely excited about seeing what the game has to offer, and in fact, I wish I could cover it faster. It's just that I'm running so many series right now that it's very, very difficult for me to keep up with everything. I'm really sort of struggling with it right now. As you can tell, I've been drowsy and just like dragging last couple of days. This combined, like work combined with the Christmas season, is definitely... I'm beginning to feel pretty tired, but I'm hanging in there for right now. Space Hulk Ascension is going to be ending actually the day that this video goes up. I'm going to put up the last episode of Space Hulk Ascension for right now. That's to make room for another Games Workshop game that we're going to be playing in the weeks to come. Probably not until about January, actually, though. But they gave me the game already, and they gave me all the DLCs and all the unlocks for it. We're going to be playing Warhammer Quest. And so I feel like I could run Space Hulk Ascension longer, but since we've got another Games Workshop game coming up, and it's actually Warhammer Quest is a game that I played as a kid, and so it's very, very nostalgic for me. I was playing it this afternoon, and I'll be honest with you, I was playing it this afternoon, I was very, very cynical, because this is a game that's important to me, much like, Descent is, or much like Hero Quest, or any of those board games are. I'm a big board game fan, and I've always wanted to have, like, a section of the Nerd Castle where I play board games. It's in the work right now. Like, I've got friends that want to be part of it. I need to buy cameras, I need to buy, like, lavalier mics, and, boom mics, and things like that. But I have people that are interested. I just need to like get the capital ready to go to get it started off. It's very expensive to start off something like that, and then additionally, it's a lot of editing. I'm actually hoping that one of the people that comes on board will take on the editing portion of it, since he's got like a lot more time to do it, and in return like maybe give him like a bigger cut of whatever the video ends up like making, essentially. But yeah, I was gonna split the proceeds between everybody that contributes to the video and whatnot after we pay for gear and everything like that. But I do want to do board games here, and definitely Warhammer Quest is one of those board games that's very near and dear to my heart. If you don't know what Warhammer Quest is, it's a lot like, it's a modular board game like Hero Quest or like Descent Journeys in the Dark, but there's no game master. The game unfolds all by its lonesome. So back in the day in the 90s, this was right before Games Workshop got super greedy. And it's probably one of the best packaged board games like ever, because it came with like 100 miniatures. It came with like a 250-page rule book. The rule book, if you didn't have the miniatures that came with the game to match the rules inside the book, so for example, let's say that you wanted to bring along halflings or something like that in your party, and you wanted a halfling in your Warhammer Quest, you could do that. You just got the other miniatures from Warhammer Fantasy, and let's say you wanted to do a Scavenger campaign, they had rules for that. You could bring like your other miniatures in that weren't included with the game. Essentially, any Games Workshop miniature was perfectly fine for it. So Warhammer Quest was one of those very, very generous games, I guess, that Games Workshop did before they got stingy, and it's a very, very good board game. It's a fun board game. It hasn't aged well, but I'm looking forward to playing it at the Nerd Castle. It's kind of one of those series where it's important to me, and so even if nobody watches it, I would still post the entire series and play the whole thing through. If you don't, essentially, they gave me all the DLCs, the company that did it, so I don't have to pay for any of the microtransaction stuff. I've got all the unlockables and all the everything, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. You've got like 15 party members you can choose from. You can choose 4 in a group, and there's War Priests of Sigmar, there's, Bright Wizards, there's all kinds of cool stuff, Shadow Warriors, there's even like a Troll Slayer. I mean, there's so many cool characters that you can play in the game that I might even do multiple campaigns. I'm not really sure right now. I can't decide on my party members. I was sitting there today, with a little bit of chagrin trying to decide what my party was going to be for the YouTube playthrough. I know I'm going to bring the War Priest of Sigmar. I'll probably bring along... I'm a little bit stuck. There's two different elves. There's a Shadow Warrior, which I know what the Shadow Warrior is in Warhammer, and there's another one called like a Wayfarer, or like a Way Wanderer, or something like that, who's like an archer. They level up, you get gear. The game is very, very well done. It's top down. The board is 2D and animated, but the characters are 3D sprites on top of that, or not 3D sprites, they're just 3D animated characters on top of that. When you equip gear and you move things around, it actually shows on your characters. So if I swap you out from like a Warhammer to like a Warhammer +3 or whatever, you can see it add in, and the game's very, very random. It's kind of like one of those old school RPGs from back in the day, where what'll happen is you'll have a segment of the dungeon, and when you walk, there are X's on the dungeon, and when you get to that point, it means there's a door, and when you open the door, it draws a card, and from that card, it determines what shape the next room is going to be, what treasure's in the next room, what enemies are in the next room, and so in that way, you can kind of walk into your first room and get attacked by like 3 Chaos Trolls if you get really, really unlucky, but it's kind of like one of those old school AD&D experiences where it's very, very difficult, but at the same time, I was thinking about this earlier. It's very, very difficult nowadays to get that innocence back. So I used to play board games when I was like 11 or 12 years old with my friends. And for some reason, as an adult, you can't get that innocence back, I guess. It's hard to describe. So when you played a game as a kid, you played it purely for fun. Like, you didn't equip the best gear. You didn't play as hard as you could trying to win. Or maybe you did. Maybe you were in, but me and my friends, we played it for fun and just for like the stories that would evolve. And that's the kind of game that Warhammer Quest is. As you unlock rooms, you go back to the tavern, you spend your gold, you get a new randomly generated dungeon. And from what I've played so far, I've played a couple hours now on Steam on the pre-release version that they sent to the press. And I'm very, very happy with it right now. I think some people are going to be a little bit down about the microtransactions. You start the game with 6 characters to choose from, and all the loot is in the game by its nature. But there's like 5 or 6 or 7 other characters you can buy for like $1.50 a piece or like $1.99 a piece that you can add. And then once you buy them all, you can put them into your party. And there's bright wizards. And they all have their own skill sets. It's just like D&D. Like, the characters have concrete things that they do. And so for $1.50, I think it'll be worth it for some people. You get a brand new character with like 5 or 6 skills, with 9 or 10 perks that they unlock as they level up, along with their own gear sets and their own, talents and things that they do. So I think it'll give you a pretty variable gameplay experience, but I don't want to treat this like a review. It's a game that I haven't played fully yet, but I'm looking forward to playing Warhammer Quest with all of you because it's a game that's near and dear to my heart. I'd be the same way if they released like a Hero Quest version on Steam, or if they released a Descent Journeys into the Dark on Steam. It's kind of like when they did Space Hulk. I'm excited about it. I am. I like Games Workshop. It's an expensive company, and I think they gouge their customers a lot of the time, but there's just nothing like it. Games Workshop products are just different. I don't know. Maybe it's just nostalgia for me, but I just love everything about both Warhammer Fantasy and Warhammer 40k. I'm just an addict. I don't even know what else to say about it. It's just like, I said at the beginning of our Space Hulk Ascension playthrough. It doesn't matter what Warhammer 40k or Warhammer games come out. I will put my mouth on the pipe and suck vigorously because I love it. I love the lore of the universe, and I just want to make sure they keep making games. Like, I don't know what I would ever do if Warhammer just like disappeared from the world. I'm really not sure, because it's been such a huge part of my life in terms of like the games that I play. Fun fact, there are in Warhammer Quest, they include a whole bunch of items that are from Gotrek and Felix. You can get Gotrek's axe, and you can get a bunch of other stuff. Very, very cool. I like that they made that reference to Gotrek Gurnison and, all the characters from my favorite book series. I don't know if I've ever said that, but my favorite fantasy novels are Warhammer Fantasy's Gotrek and Felix. If you've never read them, I highly, highly recommend them. They're very, very good books. They're not the trash fantasy novels that I thought they were going to be when I first started reading them. They're on par with like a lot of fiction-related books. I mean, they're very, very good. They're entertaining through and through, at least until they switch authors. That's when I fell off. I read the first 6 books, and then the 7th one was written by a new guy, and I didn't like it because it was read like a fanfic. Like, you could tell that the new guy that was writing it was a fan of the books before he started writing it, and it was just kind of written in a way that felt very Mary Sue-ish, I guess. You could tell that he didn't invent the characters, that he was a fan of the characters, and then they asked him to write the next book, and he was like, yeah, and like he was really stoked about it and jumped on top of it. It was a little over the top by comparison to the older books, and I didn't enjoy it quite as much. Hardland, so excited I get to show you all Hardland. I really, sincerely, that's a game that I've put a lot of faith in, and I was holding off on it, like showing it off, up until I knew that there was going to be enough content hanging out, and that we could, share it in such a way where it had content for people to play. And there's been a number of comments on that video where people are like, dude, I went and I bought this, and oh my god, I've been having so much fun with it. Thank you so much for showing it. And it's my pleasure. It's definitely my pleasure. Hardland is one of those games that I've put a lot of faith in. I got burned by Cube World. Cube World was almost the exact same game as Hardland, except that it just seems to have been dropped. Like, nothing's come out for like a year, not even like tiny little content patches. And so I switched over from being a Cube World fan to being a Hardland fan, and I'm happy to say that Hardland's development has not hit any of the same hitches that Cube World has. I'm still hoping that Wale manages to finish Cube World, but I don't know. I've kind of fallen off the bus with it. I don't go to the forums anymore. I don't go to the Reddit anymore. I don't really check on it anymore. It's kind of it. There's this period of enthusiasm I think that a fan base has, and you have a limited amount of time to act on that enthusiasm, and it's not because they're sellouts or they stop caring about your game. It's just that your attention span can only pay attention to one thing for so long, and you can only invest so much hope in one object. And so I swapped over to Hardland, and it's a game that I really sincerely hope it turns out to be an amazing game. From what it is right now, just visually, I love the game. I could sit there and just stare at it. I don't even need to play the game. I just like rotating the camera and looking at things in the game because they're so beautiful. I can't wait to see what it's going to be like once the combat is fully implemented and once all the little dungeons and all the random areas are fully implemented and all the random quests are fully implemented and like the different AIs have different things that they work on from day to day and they go about their own schedules. It's a very, very robust and a very challenging product. But thus far, the developers have not failed me. Like, they keep running into hitches on the forums. They'll be like, well, we've been working on this, but there have been some troubles. And sure enough, a week later, they'll have a breakthrough. And they'll be like, oh, we got it fixed. It's all good. And so they haven't really... I trust in their expertise. I think a lot of indie developers bite off more than they can chew. But with Hardland, every time they seem to hit like a blockade or an impasse, they just seem to like bust their way through it with about a week's worth of hard work. And I respect that. I'm hoping. I'm really sincerely hoping. I don't want to get burned again like I did on Space-Based DF9 or on Cube World. I would really prefer for that not to happen again because I try not to fanboy out. And when it came to like Space-Based DF9, I fanboyed out so hard and I was so excited about Double Fine making that game. And then they just let me down so tremendously. And it was a heartbreaker when they told me they canceled it. It was the same way with Cube World where I was really excited about the game. And then like a year with no updates and it's just kind of heartbreaking. Like I wish I had a lot of hope for the game. You know what I mean? Like I could see that they were onto something good there, and it's unfortunate that I'll never get to see it go to fruition, or even worse, that the developers will never get to see their dream go to fruition due to accounting practices or whatever else. Scavenger. Scavenger is a game that I was really pleased to get to start playing. Like I said in the first episode, it's a game that I've always wanted to play on the channel because it was one of the first LPs that I ever did back when the game was in like 0.1 alpha. Like, I remember it released to Desura and nobody really knew about it, and I played it for a little while, and the developer popped through, which was really a big deal for me because I only had, like, 85 subscribers, and so the developer came in and said hi and was talking on the comments, and it was really cool, giving me tips, trying to teach me how to play his game. Very, very cool, and I've always wanted to go back to it. The series, I thought more people would be interested in it. It's actually, as far as performance goes, Scavenger's been a little bit on the low side, but I don't really mind that much because it's a game that I feel like I owe a lot to because it's one of the first games I ever LP'd, and it's one of the first games that people got to know me through. To this day, my old Scavenger video still gets views, like in its ancient, beta, archaic form. It still gets views to this day, and so I owe the game a large debt of gratitude for bringing in a chunk of my audience back when I first started LPing. And so I want to give back. Now that I have a bigger audience and a bigger channel, I want to play Scavenger, and I want to like reward the developer, you know what I mean, for coming back in and making an awesome game and also being so cool as to allow me to play it when I was small and there was nothing for the developer to gain from allowing me to play the game on YouTube without like challenging my videos or I got the game for free as far as I remember. He sent it to me as one of my earliest review copies if I remember correctly, and my channel only had like 75 subscribers. He literally had nothing to gain from that. It was just a nice thing that he did for me. And so now that he does, like now that I can give back, it's a series that I've wanted to play. It's a game that I wanted to see the storyline of. More importantly, I very, very much wanted to see the storyline of the game once it was developed because I like the survival aspects, but I want to get into Detroit and start talking to people and start getting into some of those end game combats and figuring out who our character is. And so I think stay tuned. Scavenger, if you haven't checked it out, I'm going to try and rearrange my playlists tonight. I know I've been horrible about that, but believe me when I say I've been burning the midnight oil on this end. I've been actually running myself into the ground, so just be aware that sometimes I don't have time for some of the tiny little managerial stuff that I wish I had time for because I'm always recording and I'm always editing and I'm always, especially with Dying Light, because there's so many things I can't show you guys. I'm constantly editing that and like moving things around. Add to that 1080p 60 frame per second videos take like 4.5 hours each to render, and it's just like, woo! Every day the time disappears. Every single day the time disappears. So I've got I've got like 14 things right now I've still got to render. It's ugly on my end. We finished up Dog Sled Saga this week. I was happy with it. I know some people were disappointed that I decided to bid it adieu. but I think what the game had to offer was limited once you get past. It's very much a very, very good phone game. Like, it's a great game to play if you've got like 20 minutes to just sit on your phone and fiddle around while you're waiting at like a doctor's office or something. As far as a PC game goes, it's still fun, and I enjoy the fact that it exposes people to the wide world of dogs, which I think is largely neglected on the internet. Cats seem to have like a major monopoly on the internet, and so it's nice to see adorable dogs getting their piece of the pie for a little bit. Interstellaria, I haven't updated Interstellaria in a while. I do still have like 5 more episodes recorded for it, so the last one I updated was episode 10, and it looks like that was 3 days ago. Do not despair. We will finish that series. I'm going to try and take it as far as I can. It's just that I try not to upload more than like 4 videos a day just because that's a lot. It's a lot of videos, and I know most people don't have time to watch 4 videos a day. So it's like I try to keep it a little bit lighter, but Interstellaria will be back up and running probably tomorrow morning. I'll start uploading stuff tonight and see if I can get some of my backlog for Interstellaria uploaded. I think that I like Interstellaria a lot. It's one of those projects that I have. I rarely feature anything on the Nerd Castle that I don't like. I don't think, in fact, I ever have, and that's always been the big thing for me, is I never wanted to be one of those channels that had to cover games that I wasn't interested in just for, like, the view counts. I think that Interstellaria, though, among games that I'm interested in, I'm much more interested in Interstellaria than I normally am. It's a game that I see a lot of promise in. I've said that about a lot of things in this episode, but right now I'm very, very blessed to have a lot of things on the docket, to have a lot of games on my schedule currently that I am very, very passionate about. And in fact, I've played them and I'm just like, wow, this is a great game. I'm having a lot of fun with this. There are some times at the channel where I'm playing games that I do like, but there are aspects of them that I get frustrated with and I just bang my head against them. Whereas right now, I can't think of a single series that we're doing at the moment that I'm not super, super stoked about. Like, I sit down and I'm just excited to play. With Dead State, super excited. Every time I sit down, I end up recording a bunch of episodes. Dying Light, I have a blast with. Interstellaria, I have fun with. I mean, Space Hulk Ascension. I think I had an area where I plateaued out and I got a little bit bummed, but that's because real life stuff was happening after I moved. We have, like, thieves in the neighborhood. It's kind of like a... It's not like a bad neighborhood. That's the weird thing. There's just a lot of thieves around where I live right now. Like Christmas presents. I mean, my girlfriend got a bunch of Christmas presents stolen off the front porch that got delivered by UPS with a quickness, too. Like, they delivered it and it got stolen within, like, 10 minutes. Because I've been checking, like, every hour and a half, because I know this happens. I've been looking at my people, like, every hour and a half, just to make sure that, like, if UPS drops anything off, I'm on top of it. But thieves in this neighborhood, they stole my sandbags. I talked about that in another series. I don't remember which one it was. Maybe it was on the stream. We were going to have, like, torrential biblical floods coming through the area. And so I sandbagged my house up just in case. I know that I live, like, on the side of a hill. I'm not really that worried about it. But I sandbagged my house up. Somebody came by and stole my sandbags. It's like, damn, like, there's a free sandbag station down the street. You can see it. If you walk to the street over there and turn right, you can see the sandbag station. You can see people over there shoveling it, but nope. Stole my sandbags. Who steals a free sandbag? Apparently people in this neighborhood. I have no idea. Between the crackheads fighting and people stealing stuff, I was stressed for a little while, but I'm readjusting. My girlfriend, once we moved back here, she was like, I feel like everybody mean mugs you here. I'm like, yeah, that's because everybody does. It's just kind of like everybody got their thug face on all the time. Ain't nobody smile around here ever. It's weird. It's very, very strange thing. Salt. I did need to update you guys on Salt. So Salt, I'm going to end up having to cancel, unfortunately, because my old computer, the way that Salt saves its games is very, very odd. It roots the save in the registry. And because my new computer is 8.1 and my old computer is Windows 7, I'm not super stoked about digging around inside the registry and, like, moving things around right now. I know how to nest registry entries and I know how to dig them out. I mean, I haven't done it since Windows Vista. It's been a long time since I worked in IT, but I know the process. I know how to do it. I have my reference manuals back here. I could do it again, but I'd rather just not take the chance on a brand new computer. I think that Salt's probably going to come to an end due to that fact. It's not something that I'm super happy about, but I think it just sort of has to happen. Unfortunately, I don't want to dig around in the registry on a brand new computer. It's just something that I'd rather not get up to my elbows in random entries. I think that's about it for all of the series that we have running right now. I know that I've got... Okay, so this is going to be for the people that want more This War of Mine. I recorded the first 6 episodes of Season 2 of This War of Mine. It will be going up at some point this week. We've got the new safe house. We've got one of the new groups. We had some struggles and some difficulties in the beginning, but by and large, the game has gone very, very well. I'm looking forward to, like, putting it up on the channel. I just haven't done it yet. I haven't actually rendered them all out. That's part of those, like, 10 videos that I haven't rendered or edited yet. But yeah, there is going to be a season 2 of This War of Mine. So if you subscribe to my channel specifically for This War of Mine, I don't want this to sound too pleading because but I did do a second series and I have beaten the game like 5 or 6 times now. You'll see in this playthrough I pretty much just ham mode all the way through. I think that I've pretty much mastered the game at this point. Like, I don't want to sound arrogant about it, but honestly, I think the game gets really, really easy after you've beaten it once or twice. Like, you start to learn what you can and can't get away with when it comes to combat. You start to learn, because the combat in that game is quirky, to say the least. The stealth combat is very, very good, but the normal combat where your opponent knows where you are and you know where they are and you're fighting each other, a little quirky, very, very odd, and doesn't necessarily always behave the way that you want it to. And so once you figure out the way that all that works, though, and you get around some of the quirks, the game becomes very, very simple. I think my last couple playthroughs, I've had like over 40 food, like 50 bullets, like 20 guns, and just all kinds of ridiculous good stuff. And obviously I'm exaggerating on the guns right there, but by day 20 now, I typically have every single workbench upgraded all the way. By day 15, I tend to have more food than I'll need, even if the game goes to like day 50. It's just like you start to figure the game out and you start to figure out which locations are easy pickings and which locations you can murder like one guy and then get a ton of stuff and people are mad for like a day or two, but it secures your survival. It's just, I'm excited about doing a second season, but just be aware, it'll be a couple days before I start putting that up. I'm waiting for Space Hulk to end, and then I might wait for, well, we got Dog Sled Saga, Salt, and Ascension out of the way. I'll have to take a head count. I think that for right now, I've actually got it up on my screen right here on this side. I've got, let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 series running right now. So I can afford to add one more to the schedule at the moment. And so I think it'll probably, once we finish off Space Hulk Ascension, I'll start fiddling around probably with the second season of This War of Mine. And I hope you all enjoy it. I hope that it gets a good turnout, because honestly, this is one of the series that people like begged for. Like, people begged and pleaded and sent me emails for like a week after the series ended, just being like, please do more of This War of Mine. And so I like the game a lot. I'm actually kind of obsessed with it. I talk about that briefly in the first episode, that I've got almost like 60 hours played now on it on Steam, which for me, with my limited time schedule, that's actually fairly amazing that I've managed to spend that much time in-game on it. I've got 3 separate campaigns running, one on this computer, one on this computer, and one on my laptop. Like, I've been kind of crackheading out on. I've definitely been a cluckhead for This War of Mine content, so bear that in mind. If you want to see This War of Mine come back to the channel, it is coming back. I think we'll be able to beat it in about 10 to 12 episodes. I basically start skipping days and stuff to make it harder on myself while we play. Like, essentially, I've learned when I can skip days. I've learned how to scavenge very, very quickly, and I'm actually sort of like speed running it, I guess. Not speed running it in an official sense, but I'm definitely playing it very, very fast paced. Like, run up to dude, stab in face, steal all stuff, leave, go do something else, you know what I mean? And then during the daytime, I'm also skipping downtime, and it's a little bit better edited than my series normally are, too. When I do boring stuff, I tend to edit it out, so I think everybody's going to like it. I'm excited about presenting it to you, so let's do our Q&A for right now. I think that I'm going to do a Christmas special while I'm trying to find the video here so I can answer some questions. We are going to be doing a Christmas special where we're going to be doing the same thing that we did last year, where we will sit down and we will more than likely do the round-robin type thing. Last year, what I did, I called it a giving chain. That's what I called it. And so essentially the way that it works is I put a bunch of games into the pot, like 10, 15 codes. If you take one, you put a game in. So let's say that you've got an extra code. You take one code from there because you want the game that I put in, and you'll put one back into the pile so that someone else can get a game that they might want. Now, there is a caveat. Obviously, if you don't have the money or you want to get something for Christmas, consider it my gift to you. Or if other people give, feel free to take one out of the pot without putting one back in. I will be refreshing the pot throughout the day. I've been saving, you might wonder why I don't do giveaways throughout the year. It's for this event. I save my codes all year around for this event. And I think right now I'm sitting on top of, actually, let me take a look right here. I think I've got, let me open up my little folder here with all of my keys and see what I can do here. I've got quite a few keys right now. I've got, oh, I think I'm probably sitting on top of, well, actually, I don't think I've actually finished this list entirely, but I'm sitting on at least 15 to 20 games right now, I think. And then I'll have to go back through, yeah, for my count right now, I think I've got 16, about 20, about 25 keys. Some of them are for things I know nobody's going to want, but a lot of them are for stuff that I've played throughout the year. What developers do is sometimes after I give them coverage, as a thank you, they'll send me like 4 or 5 keys for their game. And so they say, hey, give these out to your fans. And so that's what I'm going to do on Christmas. You will all get copies, or not all of you, obviously, but I will be putting games into the pot that you can all grab for that are like things. I have Cosmonautica, for example. I have a whole bunch of keys for that. I have a bunch of keys for Clandestine. I have a whole bunch of keys for, a bunch of other games that I've played throughout the year, like Dungeon Dashers and things like that. So just watch out. It'll be fun. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun, especially once people get going. Last year we had a very, very good turnout. I accidentally opened my email on screen here. We had a very, very good turnout last year, where we had so many people that were so generous about the way that they gave games, and I do appreciate that. The people that contribute to these events are a bigger part of it than I am. Like, there's something, I can put in 20 codes, but if 100 people put in another 2 or 3 codes apiece, it turns into a Christmas event where everybody can get something fun out of it, and I think that that's really, really cool, because I was a college student, I moved out of my parents' house, and I was broke, and I know what it's like to not be able to get games you want to get, so it's nice to have it when, like, YouTubers and people that get a lot of game codes just by nature of what they do, give them back and just allow people to be like, hey, reach into the grab bag and get something nice for yourself if you want. So yeah, we will be doing a Christmas event. Let's do our Q&A real quick right here. I don't think there's a whole lot of questions this week, and in fact, I was actually kind of surprised how few questions there were, but I think we're going to be all right. I think there's a couple here. A lot of the questions are things like, a lot of them are game requests, so will you play this game, for example. So one of them asked what happened to last week's weekly review. I messed up, and there was a number of issues rendering it. For some reason, the video file, there was something wrong with it to where Vegas and Premiere would not finish editing it. Like, every time I would try and render it out, around the end it would be like, blah, 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 has failed for an unknown reason. And so I'm assuming there was some kind of video corruption or something went wrong. I finally got it to edit through, and that was like Monday after it was supposed to be posted on Sunday. And I wasn't really pleased about a lot of the things that I did in it. So if I'm not happy with the content, I'm not happy with things, I tend to not upload them. I don't know if that's the proper way for me to deal with things, but it's what I do, I guess. It's kind of my own way of censoring myself, I suppose. But anyways, I'm curious. I know you like classic rock a lot, but you seem to like goth rock, symphonic metal. Do you like Nightwish, Within Temptation, and that sort of stuff? I do, although that's a little bit more on the symphonic end. I'm not a big fan of like Nightwish and Within Temptation, actually, those are the bands you specifically asked about, so that gets a little bit too far into the symphonic edge for me. I like to like my stuff a little bit more edgy with a little bit more, I like it to have a bit of kick to it. And so let me go through my musical history here. Junior high, I got into punk rock, started with pop punk, and then got into like hard punk rock from the San Francisco area, and like things like the Casualties and DFA, and there was a big local punk scene where I grew up, and so I got into a lot of the more edgy punk stuff, some of the more gutter punk sounding stuff. But from there, I got into, I guess, nu metal is what you would call it, things like Disturbed and Slipknot and Mudvayne and Mushroom Head and things like that. After that, it just kind of like I wanted it to be harder and like more evil, I guess. And so I got into Cradle of Filth and Dimmu Borgir and, things like Burzum and Gorgoroth and a lot of black metal and things like that. I still enjoy some of the more mainstream black metal, but by and large, I don't listen to it very much anymore. Typically, occasionally, I'll listen to Arch Enemy, but I don't listen to anything from Arch Enemy after Wages of Sin. I feel like Arch Enemy started to suck after Wages of Sin. I mean, they've got selected songs off newer albums, but I got really into Amon Amarth. Basically anything like from Scandinavia, like Scandinavian metal, German metal, I like it all. Nowadays, if I'm going to listen to heavy metal, I was always a big Megadeth fan. To this day I am. I have their full discography, and I still think they rock. Last couple albums are a little bit weak. I think the last album that I really, really vouched for was The System Has Failed. Big Megadeth fan, huge Megadeth fan. Always have been, always will be. I like Overkill a lot. I like things like Black Label Society. I like kind of like that biker metal type stuff, if you know what I mean. I very, very much enjoy Blind Guardian, one of my favorite bands of all time. Sonata Arctica I like. I toured with Sonata Arctica for a little bit back in the day. I like Sonata Arctica a lot, actually. Fintroll, I played with them for a while, and also I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of Moonsorrow, another band. Actually, I'll take this time to give a shout out to Moonsorrow. When I was a kid, there was no such thing as the internet, so if you were like into a Norwegian band, there was no way for you to get their merchandise aside from like, well, there really was no way. There was no internet. I mean, if you got really lucky, you could figure out their catalog and you could get that sent to you by going through other American subsidiaries. So, for example, if you could get Metal Blade's United States catalog, you could get the number for their European catalog, and from there you could get the catalog for, Metal Blade Norway, which is a record company, one of their subsidiaries up in Scandinavia and Norway. And so I was really, really into Moonsorrow. Like, they were one of my favorite bands to this day. I don't know if this is how you pronounce it, but there's a song on one of their albums called Kilan Pasa. It remains like one of my favorite songs of all time. It rocks ass. Like, it's such a hard song. Like, they use swords clanking as like the snare drum. It's legit as hell. It's essentially like folk metal mixed with black metal. It's very, very weird and very, very niche. Most people won't like it, but I liked it. I was just head over heels for Moonsorrow. And they only had 2 albums. They were not a big band in Norway by any means. And so for Christmas one year, my mom just went above and beyond, and somehow, to this day, I don't know how she got this phone number, but she got the manager of Moonsorrow's phone number from some guy at Metal Blade Norway who was just surprised anybody in America had ever even heard of any of the bands that they were plugging. So she got the number for the manager. She called the manager and left a message. The manager called back to the house, and I got to talk to the manager. And he sent me like a recording of like all the band members saying happy. No, it was for my birthday. It wasn't for Christmas. It was for my birthday. The manager got a recording of all the band members saying hi to me and happy birthday and everything. And then after that, they sent me like this huge fan package. Like, it was so legit. Like, they sent me 2 or 3 of their shirts. They sent me all of their albums. At the time, they only had 2, but they sent me like the special editions of their albums. They signed all of the booklets. Like, they went so far above and beyond for a band to do that, to send like something halfway across the world to some kid that doesn't even like speak the same language as them. And just like, I think at the time it was sort of novel for them because they didn't even know anybody in America had heard of them. There was no internet. I have to say that there was no internet at this time. And so music distribution was rough back then. You know, you kind of went to record stores and you went through CDs until you found something you liked. You could get catalogs at sort of like record stores. If they didn't have what you wanted, you could have them special order it. You could go through Sears and stuff like that. But I think they were stoked. And honestly, like, that was so legit. To this day, I give Moonsorrow the biggest props ever. And in fact, I'm glad that I have like a fan base now that I could tell this story to. So go listen to Moonsorrow. Like, listen to some of their older stuff and then transition into their newer stuff. They're a great like folk heavy metal band. Fantastic, and they love their fans too. Like, they really, really love their fans. Like, for them to do that for some random 14-year-old kid halfway across the world, mind-boggling, absolutely mind-boggling. That's the kind of thing right there that you're like, wow, that's a band that like cares about its fans. So anyways, I'm really into a lot of folk metal and things like that. I'd say Blind Guardian is probably my favorite band right now in like the folk metal scene. There's not a lot of other bands that do similar things. I mean, obviously you've got like Rhapsody, and there's a couple other bands that try to do the same thing that Blind Guardian does, but none of them quite get to the level. Like, Blind Guardian is just legit as hell. Their production values in combination with just like how good their music is just mind-boggling sometimes. Like, you sit down and I listen to like their chord progressions and things, and you just be like, wow. Even from like a musical theory standpoint, like, you listen to what they did and you're like, oh my god, so he went from like a fourth right there, and then he did this. Everything about that band, whether you're like into math metal or anything else, they're still like a really, really good band, and I enjoy it. Not a big fan of prog metal. I'm actually not a classic rock fan, actually. I know that I like certain classic rock bands a lot, but by and large, I feel like classic rock is overplayed. I burned it out, I guess, and so to me, it's overplayed. The few classic rock bands that I still listen to are gonna be Foreigner. I love Foreigner. I'm a big Foreigner fan. I like Queen because I grew up listening to Queen. Queen is my dad's favorite band. And so I grew up listening to Queen in his car and in his truck when we would drive around town. And so I've always been a big fan of Freddie Mercury and Queen. And I'm glad that actually they've had like a resurgence over the last couple of years where Freddie Mercury has kind of become like this folk hero on Reddit and everything like that. I'm glad because Freddie Mercury deserves it. I think for the time period, he was one of those rock stars that very, very much deserved it. He like started with nothing. Essentially, I think his parents were like poor Polish immigrants or something like that to the United States. And for within one generation, for him to go from like living like in the boondocks in like an immigrant area to just like blowing up and becoming like one of the biggest rock stars, one of the wealthiest, rock stars in the country. That's the kind of story right there that it's nice to hear that happens to people sometimes, because sometimes it's very, very easy to lose faith in like the American dream and things like that. Honestly, it really, really is. So sometimes you got to hold those heroes close and just like hope, that it'll happen to you or happen to your family members or happen to somebody just to prove over and over again that it'll happen. Let's see here. The sideburns are coming back. Indeed, they are. The sideburns are coming back. Will you be playing more stealth games? Maybe. It could happen. I don't know. They also, will you bring up your Patreon more? Okay, well, I have a Patreon. I'll put a link up to it. If you don't know what Patreon is, it's essentially like, it's sort of like, I don't even know how to describe it. Essentially, it's like Twitch's subscription or donation program. Essentially, you just like vow to give like $5 a month to like the content creator of your choice, and then in return, if you get to certain milestones, I do other things, like I add more shows to the docket because I can afford to like buy the video cameras and stuff that I need to do it. But anyways, most of the stuff on my Patreon is just like jokey bullshit. I mean, I will do it. I'll totally do it if the donations get to that level, but most of it I kind of got drunk and thought about one night and just did like a whole bunch of funny stuff. Splattercat, is that a gauge in your left ear? I'm relatively new to your channel and I just realized that, or is it fake? It's real. I've always been, I like ear stretching. Right now I have my ears at about a half an inch. I've stopped. I haven't stretched them in about 2 years, and that's at the behest of my significant other. I didn't want to get them too large anyways. As they are right now, I don't think they're going to close off, and I'm lucky to have like a avenue of employment where I can do that and I can like get tattoos and stuff and not have to worry about it. I'm a big fan of tattooing too. I actually at some point would like to have like full sleeves done and like onto my hands and everything else. A lot of my friends have them right now. They're all like auto mechanics and stuff like that. The people that I know in real life, everybody's big into tattooing. Everybody has sleeves. It's kind of like a, I don't know, just kind of like this thing that we all do. I'm not really sure, but I've never had like the cash flow to do it. So eventually I'd like to get it done. But then again, I can never feel like I'm not throwing away a bunch of money when I go to get tattoos. Like they'll be like, all right, $300. And you'd be like, okay, well, it was for like a big tattoo and it's really, really detailed and it took a long time. But I don't know. I prefer to spend money on things that are like productive and like make me more productive. I don't know. That's kind of like my plan for success. Are you going to play the Banner Saga 2? Indeed I am. I like the Banner Saga 1 and I want to see where the storyline goes after you wake up Jormungand or whatever the hell that giant worm is that woke up. I think it was supposed to represent Jormungand, but there's a giant like worm that awakens at the end of the game that comes to consume the world and end it at night. So planning on it. Definitely planning on doing Banner Saga 2. I don't know when it's coming out though, so are you planning on going holiday? If so, where would you like to go? Actually, I would love to go to the United Kingdom. A big dream of mine has always been to live in London for a little while. I don't know why that's a big dream of mine. I can't explain to you why I want to do it, but I've always wanted to live in London for a little while, or maybe live in Dublin, or, you know, my dad has a friend who's an immigrant from Belfast, and just like, when you hear people that are from the old country who have like moved here and they talk about it, they get like a special reverence in their voice. And I don't know, I'd love to see. My family has roots all over the UK. Like, my family members are just like an amalgam of like Welsh, Scottish, Irish, and English to such an extent that you can't really tell what we are anymore. Obviously, we're American at this point, but I'd like to go back. I mean, my grandmother spent a bunch of time tracing our lineage all the way back into like the 1600s. And, you know, you can follow our family in Scotland as it moves from location to location. And as wars happen, we kind of like migrate over to here. And, you know, it's interesting to look at. She actually created this giant book. It's like that thick where you could just go through and like watch the evolution of like that half of our family. Just go through. And I'd love to visit Scotland. I'd love to visit Ireland. Just spend like a month or so just kind of running around the UK and just sort of like visiting everywhere. I'd like to see. I've always wanted to be a world traveler, though. It's something that I grew up in kind of like a working class area, and so people where I lived, they would save up for like years and years and years to go on holiday, and typically it was something like they would just go to like Mexico, like they would go to Cancun or something like that. And so I do want to travel the world. I do want to see people and talk to people and get people's perspectives. I don't necessarily want to be a tourist. Like, I want to go to places and like live there, you know what I mean? And whether or not that's something I'll ever be adventurous enough to do, I'm not really sure. But the fun thing about my job here on YouTube is that I can do it from like anywhere. So there's really nothing stopping me from moving to Germany or something for a little while, or, you know, moving here to there, other than like, I guess, visas and things like that. I'm not really sure, though. I would love to live in South Korea. I would love to visit Japan. I would love to visit South Korea. I'd love to visit China. Actually, my ultimate dream is that I've always wanted to go to North Korea. I've heard you can do it through the Canadian embassy. You can go up and you can have your visa vetted with the Canadians, and they'll give you like a temporary Canadian visa, so that, because they won't let Americans into North Korea without paying like a huge amount of money due to conflicts of the past and of the present, obviously. But you can go and do it through Canada, which I think is how a lot of news groups and things do it, and I've always been interested in doing it. You can also do it through China. You can get a visa for China, and then I've heard that you can just like bribe a guy in China, and he'll make you a passport to go to North Korea as like a fake Chinese citizen or whatever. Although that's what Vice Network said that's what they did when they went to North Korea, is that they just like bribed a guy in China and like made it happen. But yeah, I'd love to see the entire world, everything from Russia to Spain. I mean, I have a friend who's a first-gen, you can tell it's the United States. I have a friend who's a first-generation immigrant from Spain, and he goes back there. Actually, his family has a house in Spain, and his family has a house here, and half his family lives over there, like his aunts and his uncles and whatnot live in Spain. And then he and his family and his brothers and sisters live here, and year round they swap houses, and they just like swap. So for half the year his aunt and uncles live here, and for half a year they live over there. And he talks about how beautiful Spain is and how much he loves it all the time. I would love to see all those places. I'd love to go to Brazil. I'd love to go to South America. I mean, it's just, where's the time? I'd love to go to Greenland and Iceland. I mean, just keep naming them. Keep naming them. I'd love to see areas of, Africa and Egypt and places like that too. I'd love to see India. I would love to see Dubai. I mean, I always look at pictures of Dubai and I'm like, wow, it looks like a place that has a lot of hustle and bustle. But yeah, I've always wanted to be well-traveled and just like talk to people. I don't want to be the kind of tourist that goes someplace and just kind of like hangs out at Sandals. I want to like talk to the locals and be like, introduce myself and, find people's perspectives and have conversations about things. Because I think that's how horizons get expanded. Like having just conversations with people who have come from different places than you, such that they can't have anything but like a different experience. And like hearing that viewpoint, I've always enjoyed that, talking to my friends who are like, first generation, second generation immigrants, and talking to their parents about the differences between where they lived and how they live here. Even talking to my aunt just came over from Wales about a year ago, and just talking to her about, the pub she used to run in Wales. And just like how things are different, how, she said that she had regulars at her pub who would show up at like 9 o'clock in the morning, like first thing in the morning, and they would just hang out at the pub all day and just like, hang out, play darts, shoot pool, and just like hang out at the pub all day. And that's just like what they would do, on their days off with all their friends and everything. And it's just such a different, there's a different culture to like every place that you live. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And I want to experience that and see how other people, behave on their home ground and just sort of like get a feel for everything. But yeah, I would love to travel. Going on holiday is not something that I've been planning on right now. I would like to. I would definitely like to see, Europe and Asia and just everything. You're only on this planet for like such a short amount of time. I always find it to be so kind of sad that we all spend so much time like working 50-hour weeks and things like that, when there's like this huge world out there, and you can't see it without the money, obviously. But I always think that's a weird catch-22. Like you have to work all the time to get the money to go see like all these things there are to see. But if you work all the time, you may never get there. So it's a very, very strange kind of cyclical problem. Let's see here. Oh, somebody told me, so I brought up in the earlier episode, I talked about how there was a Mount and Blade mod for Lord of the Rings, and apparently it's called The Last Days, and it was ported over to Warband. The last time I checked on it, it hadn't been, but maybe I'll check that out. What faction are you going to be playing in Eternal Crusade? If you're going to join the boys, then what clan is your favorite of the ones that they provide in-game? Well, it kind of depends. It really does sort of depend, to be honest. Like, the thing that I would talk about here is that Games Workshop and its subsidiaries, they tend to favor certain armies. I don't think anybody that's ever been familiar with Warhammer 40k will know that they favor certain armies over the other, and I'm hoping that this does not occur when we move over to Eternal Crusade. I hope that they give the elves just as much attention as they give the orcs, just as much attention as they give the space marines, because I feel like one of the fundamental follies of Games Workshop and the way that they run their business is that they pay too much attention to who pays the bills. Like, I get that you have to give a certain amount of fan service to people that buy the majority of your miniatures, but at the same time, you've got to wonder what percentage of the population specifically does not play Space Marines, and they really, really do. They go through and they favor the Space Marines, and there's not much that you can do about it. They heavily favor the Space Marines. All you have to do is look at how many codices come out every single year for the Space Marines compared to everybody else, and I'm hoping that when this game gets developed, they show equal treatment to everybody. That stipulation out of the way, if the customization for the Orc Boys is equally as robust as it is for every other army, absolutely, we'll be playing the Boys. My favorite clan right now, well, I like the Freebooters. I really, really like the Freebooters. The Cult of Speed is pretty cool. I don't know. I mean, the orcs that I had, as I recall in my army, were Death Skulls, I think. I had them all painted blue and tan and everything else. I'm pretty sure that's the Death Skulls. You can all correct me if I'm wrong here. I'm pretty sure it was Death Skulls. I haven't followed the orc clans in a while, though, so I don't know which ones have been phased out in the last 10 years or so. But yeah, I would say I like the Cult of Speed. I like the Freebooters because who doesn't like pirate orcs that are just like mercenaries that will fight for anybody that pays them the most? And Death Skulls. Death Skulls because I like the color blue. And also, as I recall, there was something about the Death Skulls that I liked, but I don't remember what it was. I think it might have been like their mechanical proficiency or something. There was another reason other than just the blue that I picked the Death Skulls, and I can't remember what it was. In fact, let me look up the Death Skulls right now and see what we can come up with here. I'll probably see it real quick once I bring up the wiki. Oh, that's what it was. I remember. They were thieves. That's what I liked about the Death Skulls, is that they were just ruthless about stealing. They would steal from their own people. They would steal from everybody. Like, basically, if you, that's what it was. I thought it was hilarious how they would basically steal anything that wasn't nailed down. That's what it was with the Death Skulls. They steal stuff, and then they use the parts to modify vehicles or something like that, as I recall. But yeah, I thought that was hilarious the first time that I read it. And then I always ran with, like, Psychers. I love Orcish Psychers. They're hilarious. Because, like, when you play with Orcish Psychers, like, you have no idea what's going to happen. Essentially, you just, like, roll a dice, and sometimes they blow up, like, half your own army. And then other times they come through and just obliterate the enemy in one spell, and you're just like, that was awesome. I like the random nature of it all. But, yeah. Death Skulls, Cult of Speed, and then the Freebooters. Very, very much like the Freebooters. Let's see here. What else do we have? Let's see here. Was wondering about what stats you have for your rig, not so much for recording, but just for great gameplay. Well, the computer that I just bought, and we'll see if I can remember how to do this because I'm still not acclimated with Windows 8. I'm sincerely, I don't like how, like, the little search bar went. I don't like the new start menu. I don't like what they did to the start menu. Like, I get, like, you could just move everything around, and they just move, like, the run bar is actually at the top of all of your different file structures and everything now, but still, the computer that I just bought has an i7-5820, and that's a 3.3 gigahertz processor with 12 CPUs, obviously. It's 12 cores. I've got 16 gigs of memory on here. I don't know. I don't really need 16 gigs. That seems like a little bit of overkill, but it's what came with this rig, so I just went with it. It's got a GTX 980 in it. I think the motherboard, as I recall, is a... Let me see here. It's an MSI something. It's an X99S SLI Ultra. Or no, an SLI Ultra Plus or something like that. I don't know. The sticker is blocked right now by the graphics card, so I can't see it through the side of the case. I got it from iBuyPower. Right now, I've been thinking about RMAing it, though, because the USB ports on the front don't work. I've been trying to decide if that's, like, worthy of me sending... I just got it set up for doing all of my recording and everything, and I'm trying to decide if that's worth, like, sending the entire thing back. I don't really use the front ports very much, and there's, like, 50 ports on the back, so it's not that big of a deal. Technically, the USB ports on the front of it work, but I think they share an electrical source or something. It's very, very odd. If you plug, there's a USB 2.0 and there's a USB 3.0, a blue one and a black one, even though the black one's supposed to be orange. But anyways, they stopped color coding. I don't know. As long as it's blue, it's, you know, a super speed or a super whatever USB 3.0 drive. But anyways, there's a 3.0 on the front, there's a 2.0 on the front. And if you plug just one thing into one of them, it's fine. But if you plug something into both of them, so let's say I take two flash drives and I plug one into the 3.0 and one into the 2.0, they short each other out, and then from there it'll drop and reacquire whatever's plugged in over and over and over again, or it'll just drop it entirely. And I'm trying to decide if that's worth RMAing and going through the RMA process right now. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now. I just got a new computer. It's like brand new. It got here like 2 weeks ago, and the USBs were working on the front, and then they just kind of stopped. I don't know if I am going to RMA it because at this point it would damage my recording schedule, and at a certain point, when you use your computer for the thing you do to earn your living, you've got to, like, check and balance whether or not it's going to be worth it for you, because if I lose, like, a week's worth of work by sending that in and getting another one sent to me, then, you know, I'd rather just have the two busted USB ports. I don't even care. So that's where I'm at right now. That's the stats that I'm recording on at the moment. It's got a couple of hard drives in it. I'm going to slap a 10,000 RPM drive in there pretty soon, too, so that I'm not recording to an external drive, because as of right now, actually, the USB ports on my new computer aren't as good as the USB ports on my old computer. The 3.0s on my old computer are faster. They do like 176 MB per second, which means that I can, like, burn it up with 1080p 60 frames per second recordings, even if I just use, like, the raw data. I don't need to compress it or anything. This one right here seems to top out at about 105, which is not enough for fraps, and it's almost not enough for, you know, DxTory unless you're using it to compress on the lowest settings on YY12 or whatever. So for RGB video and things like that, I don't think I need RGB. I don't normally record in RGB, but that's one of the struggles I've had with this computer, the new one anyways. The USB ports are rated for USB 3.0, but the speeds aren't quite as good as on my old computer. And obviously, no two pieces of computer machinery are ever alike. I think I'm pretty good on this episode. I like the questions we've had so far. I really, really have. These questions are all nice things here. I see. If you played Mount and Blade Warband with the Lord of the Rings mod, what army would you pick? I would pick the Gondorians, because the Gondorians mean a great deal to me. My tattoo on my arm is the White Tree of Gondor, and I had a problem with depression when I was younger. Like, I just got depressed a lot. Like, I was always upset about things, and I always felt like the world was pissing down on me. And so the underlying story to the Gondorians is, if you look at the Kings of Gondor, and actually not the Kings of Gondor, the Steward of Gondor, if you look at the overarching story of Gondor, Gondor's story is wrapped up in despair. There are people that choose to despair, and there are people that choose to fight back. And by giving those two choices, that's Tolkien's commentary on how cultures adapt to hardship. And so you have certain characters who just give in, like they just quit. So, for example, you have Denethor. Denethor is the guy that I was trying to think of right now, and I was pulling a major brain fart. Denethor gives in to despair, and he's not supposed to be a character that you're supposed to like. He's supposed to be an unlikable character. When he gives into despair, he sells out his sons. He sends them to ride off to their deaths and all kinds of horrible stuff. And you have other characters like Boromir and characters like Faramir. Boromir is the middle ground. He struggles with despair. He thinks that you should use the ring to fight back against darkness, that we should use the enemy's, tools against him. But eventually, he makes up for that fact. After he tries to steal it, he sells his life to save the rest of the Fellowship, in order to allow them to continue their journey. And so he chooses not to give in to despair. He chooses to find hope and to fight his way through. And I like that. And then Faramir, obviously, is the one who always holds out for hope. And so I would prefer to play the Gondorians. They're, as someone who has a history, like when I was younger, of just kind of being down and being depressed about things, that's why I got that tattoo. I hate it when people talk about their tattoos and explain it, and so it bugs me that I'm doing it right now. This is one of my pet peeves, but anyways, that's why I got a tattoo of the White Tree of Gondor, is because I draw a tremendous amount of strength from the story of Gondor. I like Gondor. I like the fact that, unlike the Rohirrim and unlike Rohan, Rohan has its struggles, but at the end of the day, Rohan rallies and they fight their way through, and they're like, yeah, let's go, let's do it. Gondor is of two minds. Gondor understands that maybe we should side with the Dark Lord. They struggle with it a little bit, and the struggle is very human for Gondor. Whereas for a lot of the other factions, I don't feel like they're represented in a human way. Rohan, they're valorous. They're supposed to be kind of referencing the horse lords, somewhere in between Mongolians and Vikings, you know what I mean? Where they're supposed to be valorous and honorable, and they're supposed to fight through anything. With the Gondorians, I think you see the moderate people who aren't sure what they should do, that know that they aren't that strong. They know that they have a military and that they can fight. They just can't decide if it's the right idea or not. They don't know whether they should just give up and fold or whether they should fight. And I like that they have that human element, because a lot of people struggle with that. Do you fight through, or do you let it get to you, That's one of the fundamental things about being human. Do you keep going, or do you give up and balk when a challenge is ahead? And I like that that's represented in Gondor. So if we ever did a Mount and Blade mod, or any game that had the Lord of the Rings, I would probably choose the Gondorians. I'm not a big fan of the elves in that series, because I feel like, on one hand, in Lord of the Rings, so there is a very real argument to be made that the elves have more to lose, because in the lore of Lord of the Rings, the elves don't have an afterlife. So if they die, they're dead permanently. They don't go to heaven, they don't go to hell, they don't go anywhere. They're just poof, gone, blackness, it's over. So for an elf to die, they're immortal. They're basically giving up everything when they choose to fight the Dark Lord. And so for every elf that dies, that's actually a much more tremendous sacrifice than it is for a human to die, because when we die, we go on to the afterlife in the world of Lord of the Rings. I think it's called, it's got a name and I can't remember what it is. It's been so long since I read the Silmarillion or any of the books. It's seriously been a decade, so I'm probably talking out of my ass right now. But it's called the Blessing of Men, or the Curse, or the Folly of something rather. Either way, that's why elves look at humans with a little bit of jealousy, is because we have short lives and we only live 60 years, but no matter what happens, we get to pass on to the afterlife, whereas all that they get is this right now on Middle Earth. They're immortal as long as they stay in this realm, and if they die in battle or anything else, they're gone forever. Poof, that's it. Like, they don't get reincarnated, they don't go to heaven, nothing happens for them. They're just gone, which is why so many of the elves choose to flee to the west, where they can be immortal forever, because the Dark Lord can't go to the west. I don't remember why, but the world of the west, once you get there, everybody's immortal. So, for example, that's why Bilbo goes there at the end of the Return of the King. He goes west so that he'll live forever among the elves. But yeah, I don't like the dwarves because they're greedy and they're stupid, and the dwarves, I always felt like there was a weird juxtaposition in Lord of the Rings. Like, in The Hobbit, they are greedy and they are prideful, but at the same time, they're honorable and they're valorous and they fight with everything that they have. But then there's a weird turnaround once you get to the trilogy, where the dwarves are almost always depicted as being just kind of like they bicker among themselves, they can't get along, they're totally ineffectual as a fighting force, they die every time that, something bad happens, like just because they can't get along long enough, or they can't get over their greed, so they hide in the mountains and they refuse to come out. And I don't like the way that they're portrayed in the trilogy. I like the dwarves from back in the Hobbit era with Smaug, but I felt like there was kind of like a shift in gears in the way that Tolkien decided to represent the dwarves. Maybe that's because they were a dying race. I don't know. I don't remember what happens. Something happens to the dwarves when they die, and it's distinct from what happens to the elves or the humans, but I can't remember what it is. But I think they're going extinct. The dwarves are obviously going extinct, so there is an argument to be made, just like with the elves, that they should run away and they shouldn't fight, since, they live a long time here, that they're losing a lot more than a human being who dies in battle, since they just get to go on up to the afterlife and just, like, live happily ever after. But anyways, I would play Gondor. I've always found them to be sort of the most human element of the world of Lord of the Rings. You never hear much of the men of Bree, you never hear much of the men of Dale, you never hear much about, any of the Hobbit clans or anything like that. I think they fight at the end of the Return of the King. There's the Scorching of the Shire, if I remember correctly. But that's like, I think wasn't that wargs that attacked the Shire or something like. It's been a long time. Like, seriously, I haven't read the trilogy in forever, and I should. Let's see here. Are you going to play multiplayer or competitive games with viewers or such? I don't play multiplayer games or competitive games. I very much prefer single player games. I've always been that way. I would like to. I think that I'd love to make a Nerd Castle clan. I probably couldn't moderate it, so I'll probably have somebody from the Steam forums maybe do it. But I would love to have a Steam clan for when we go into Eternal Crusade that just revolves around the Nerd Castle. I will obviously, I'll start it up, but I'll probably cede control of it to people who know how to do things strategically and can organize events, because I just don't have time to. But I will do my best to participate in those events and keep things, organized so that we can actually be a force to be reckoned with on the map. I think that's going to do it for the Q&A right now. I've enjoyed this episode. I'm happy that I was able to get back on the horse. I wanted to say Merry Christmas to all of you. Obviously, I'll be recording a Christmas episode very, very soon so that we can do that round robin giving chain. I'm looking forward to doing it with all of you. Giggity. And I'm also looking forward to, giving back to the Nerd Castle a little bit. So, my name is Splattercat. I'll see you all next week. This is our weekend review. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all next Sunday after Christmas has passed. Bye, everybody.